Welcome back to the show, everyone. I wanted to just do a brief aside. Often at the very end of the show, and many of you might have dropped off, I ask you to do me a solid, and that is to rate and review the podcast. I know many of you are watching this live on our linear platforms, or if you're a member, you can be watching it live there too. We also release an audio podcast. For years and years before I started working for TYT, that's actually how I consumed our content, was through the podcast. So we wanna make sure that we always have that available for you. But the best way for more people to discover that podcast and start to be a part of the community, the Damage Report community, is for you to rate and review that podcast. And so when people do that, I wanna give them a little shout out, and so I'm gonna briefly do that. I saw one review by Steph Dunn 1207 who said, I've been listening to the Damage Report almost daily for the past few months. The host, Iadarola, gives a refreshing view of American politics and other important topics. It's great to have someone who seems to feel the same way I do about inaction on climate change, given a platform through this podcast and show. I recommend giving it a listen. Thanks, John. Well, thanks you, Steph Dunn. And SS Whiff said, progressive, intelligent, funny, what's not to love? And what's not to love about that review? Awesome. It only takes a minute, and the way that podcast hosting works, that's how people discover it. They push it out when it gets more ratings and reviews. So if you could do that, I would certainly appreciate that. Thank you in advance.
He used to take podcasts in all the time, and look where he's become. You could be the next John Iadarola.
Exactly, you could get as deathly ill as I do by consuming this podcast on a daily basis. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.